Hi guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining. Um, so I'm actually gonna give everyone another minute to make sure we're not missing anyone, and then we're gonna start. So while we wait for everyone to join us, I'm gonna tell you why I have two pictures here. So originally when I made this painting, it looked more like this. So it had a slightly uh, brighter and contrast bottom, and it only had one piece of land here, a little cliff with a tree. And then I was thinking about it and I was thinking more and I was thinking, what else can I add to it? And then I added a little bit of white glow and a second cliff. So this is why I have two versions. So in between when this event was created, when the image looked like that, and in between now, there's some development that happened. So this is why I have two. I'm still going to stick with teaching the original image that we have created for this event, but I'll also show you how to do optionally the add-ons that I added later on. So that's why they're slightly different. I hope this makes sense. And I can, I guess, refer to either one of them because they are pretty much the same, except this is the only difference is one has white added here and a second cliff, and one doesn't. The rest is exactly the same. All right, so it's 7:06, so I guess I hope at least we have everyone who was hoping to join us today. And if someone is still missing, hopefully they join us shortly. If you guys haven't painted with us before, welcome. Just wanted to let you know that this video will stay right here on our YouTube channel. This is a live event, so you're more than welcome to ask any questions that you may have. I will be happy to answer them for you to the best of my ability. But you can use the same link if you received the link, or you can just come here to our channel to watch it anytime as well. It's going to remain right here. It is being recorded. So if you can't stay the entire event, or you can only do half today and something comes up, you're more than welcome to come back and finish the second half anytime. Hi guys. And if we haven't met before, my name is Vera. I will be your instructor for today. And this is what we're going to paint. All right, so let's go through all our supplies. First thing that we're going to need is a canvas. I'm going to be using a fairly small canvas. This is 8 by 10 inch. You're more than welcome to go bigger if you want. That's totally fine. This is the original size that I created it on. That's why I'm going to stick with the same size. But again, if you prefer to go bigger, absolutely go for it. It's going to look great. And my instructions are not size specific either. So absolutely any size will do. Whatever size works for you, works for me. To answer your question, where do you post your paintings? I will include link in the description of this video. There's nothing in description right now, but once this video is done, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to edit everything, and I will add whatever needs to be added. So I will add where you can post your finished paintings, because again, we do love to see your finished paintings. So would be pretty cool to see them in the end. All right, so canvas of any size. Mine is 8 by 10 inch. We're going to use some paint. I'm going to use primary colors only, which is red, blue, yellow, plus black and white. For our three primary colors, it's important that your blue is on a greener side blue, so such as phthalo or primary blue, because we're going to be mixing some teals here. And for your red, it's important that it's a pinker red, because we will be mixing some pinks from it. And if your red has an orange undertone, unfortunately, you're just not going to be able to mix a good vibrant pink out of it. So always good to have red that has a pinker undertone and doesn't have any orange premixed, and blue that has a greener or colder undertone and doesn't have any purple premixed. As far as yellow, any yellow will do. You will only use literally bare minimum of it, like a little dot, and black and white, again, any will do. Now, as far as brushes, I'm going to be using a few different brushes, and we always recommend using at least 3 brushes. So something on a bigger side, something medium, something small. For the small canvas, you could technically get away with just 2 brushes. That's totally fine. If that's all you got, you have enough. I would probably recommend for this particular painting a rounded brush. So I'm going to use, this one is going to be my large brush. You see, it's nice and rounded. For my medium one, let's find a good medium brush here. I will probably use this one. It's not really a true medium, but because It's kind of a small brush, but because my canvas is pretty small, I could probably use that as my medium. And for the small brush, regardless of the size of your canvas, you're gonna need a brush with a really pointy tip because we do have some fine details here. So to get those fine details, you're gonna need a nice brush with a pointy tip. If your brushes go by numbers, then maybe 0, 1, or 2. Or if you don't have those small brushes, that's okay. You can even use a larger brush. Just make sure it has a pointy tip. So I hope that makes sense. You could definitely do this with the square brushes if you don't have the rounded ones or the pointy ones, but you will find it easier to work with the pointy brushes. It just requires a little bit more technique and skill if you're working with the square brushes. And of course, it's good to have a paper towel or reusable fabric cloth to dab our paint and our brush on it. And water. Oh, and for this particular painting, we're going to start with a sketch. So make sure you have a pencil of some kind. Just regular HB pencil is great. It doesn't have to be any fancy pencil. And eraser, of course, is good to have as well, because if you make a mistake, you can just always erase it if you have an eraser. Oops. Well, I guess this one is gone. I'll find another eraser, or I can just wipe it off. Either is fine. And another thing that would be beneficial to have, it's not a requirement, but you see how we have a nice circular moon here? So if you have something that is a nice circular shape that you could use for your moon, grab it. I will actually give you guys a minute to find something because I'm pretty sure that was not listed in the description of event and in supplies. So you probably didn't come prepared with a circular object, but any household object such as cup, some sort of glass, maybe even a small bowl, or anything that has a circular shape will work really well. So I'll just give you guys a minute to find something that's circular for our moon. And it can be smaller, it can be bigger. That's entirely up to you. For me, I would say this is maybe like about a third of the height of my canvas, approximately. But again, could be bigger, could be smaller. All right, I don't think I have anything exact that shape, but this is pretty close. Yeah, that's not what I used originally, but it's pretty close. So I'll use that, but you could use something like this too. This would be a bit bigger, smaller. Don't ask me why I have so many painter's tape. Okay, so that's pretty much all our supplies. I hope that makes sense. And if you guys not into mixing and you prefer to use premixed paint, totally fine. Go for it. Whatever works for you. All right, let me quickly see if there are any questions. What kind of acrylic? I'm using, oh, it's a mix. It's a mix. I'm using some Start, my favorite acrylic, which you cannot find in the stores anymore. So that whatever I have, some Artist Loft, and I'm using some Art Noise. So, but any student grade acrylic will do. This is just what I am using. All right. So I'm gonna put my paint and my brushes aside for now. We don't need it. We're gonna start with a sketch. And just grab your pencils for now. So here's my pencil, and I'm gonna start with my moon. So I'm just gonna grab the shape that I want to use for my moon. I'm gonna use this one. Let's clean it up a little bit here. Done. And I'm just gonna put it in my top right corner, and I'm gonna go ahead and I will outline that. Ta-da! Circle. So hopefully you also have your circle. And you can always add it on top too. Like you don't have to even do it right now. We can do it later because we're going to start with a background. So we will work right over our moon. We're not going to reserve a spot for it. In the end, you may or may not see this pencil through the layer of our background. And if you don't, that's okay. We'll just wait until it dries, or we'll grab a blow dryer, we'll dry it up, and we'll add a circle on top. But hopefully you will see some of it through. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to sketch just the cliff. We're not going to sketch the tree. And this is just for us to kind of have an approximate positioning. Again, we're going to paint right over it. You're likely even not going to see it in the end. And we'll likely have to either draw it on top or just freehand it. But why we do it up front and right away before we move on to our background, even knowing that it will potentially get lost? Two reasons. Reason number one, it may not get lost. It may be very well visible through your background, and then great, you don't need to sketch it again. Reason number two, even if it does get lost, your brain will remember where you positioned it. So this is like a trial run in a way. You can make mistakes here. You can figure out what shape you want, where you want to position it, and then your brain will remember it. And when you actually move on to painting it, it would be much, much easier for you to position it and have it the shape that makes you happy and that you like. So I would say it's going to start somewhere right here. So about maybe a third from the left. But again, it doesn't matter. It's not a precise math. So just somewhere in this corner. And I'm going to add a little curved line towards my right. That's the upper part. And then I'm going to add bottom line on a different angle. And this one is going to be a bit flatter. The bottom one is going to be a little bit more wavy, I guess, and weirdly shaped. So do you see this one has a very interesting and strange shape? So it's imperfect, abstract, no pattern wave. So there is no particular pattern here. It's not repetitive. It's just almost zigzaggy in a way. All right, great. And again, if you're with me from the beginning, you know that this was actually not on my original painting. So I'm not going to be sketching it. This is going to be add-on, the same as this white line here that I'm going to show you as an optional add-on. All right, so now we can put our pencils aside and we're going to grab our brush. And how we're going to work here is I'm going to work from my blues down to my pinks. So I'm going to start here with beautiful blues, then some teals, blues, darker blues, some purples, and it's gonna stay lighter in the middle and darker towards the edge. We're gonna dry brush all of this. And then as we go down, I'm gonna start disappearing it. And then here, somewhere around here, I'm gonna start moving on to light purple. So I'm gonna do light purples. And then as I narrow in here, I'm gonna move to pinks and then warmer pinks, and then almost like an orangey colors in there. So we're gonna go from cold to warm and from light to dark, if that makes sense. All right, so we're gonna grab our large brush, we'll dip it in the water. We'll grab our palette, and the first color that I wanna start with is gonna be teal. So it's gonna be fairly light one too. I'm gonna scoop my paint on the side, my white, and I'm gonna add just a little bit of blue, make nice light blue. And then to this color, I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow. All right, I'm happy with this color. This is a really nice shade of light teal, but you go with whatever color makes you happy. You don't have to follow me precisely on all those colors. Just use whatever colors make you happy, or whatever shade of colors makes you happy. But I'll still try to stick with the same general idea of working from light to dark and from cold to warm. So I'm just gonna start from middle, and I'm just gonna start rubbing it in a circular motion as I go towards the sides. And whenever you run out of paint on your brush, just refill your brush. Again, there's no particular pattern in which you have to be adding it. You want to cover a very large portion in the middle. So I wouldn't say you have to cover the whole thing, but I would say a lot of it. And I am gonna mix a bit more. If you guys painted with me before, you know that I always under mix the amount of paint that I need, and that's okay. I'm perfectly happy with it because then I don't waste paint. All right, let's go down. And if you have to mix a couple times and it doesn't turn out to be the exact same shade, great. That's a good thing for this particular painting. Generally, you do want to fit in here as many shades as possible. So more shades means better, more interesting artwork. So don't try to match it precisely to the shade you used previously, or even intentionally mix a couple different shades as you go. So here, you see the area that I covered fully? You do want a full coverage. Notice I can't see any specks of white canvas through. That's what you want. You don't want to dry brush it to a degree that you can see specks of white canvas through. Absolutely not. Here, as you go to the edge, yes, rub it into your background. So it's nice and light and it's easier to merge other colors into it. But in the areas that stay fully covered, where you want to cover your canvas fully, you want to have actually full coverage. You don't want to see specks of canvas through. All right, let's go a little bit lower here. All right, I think I'm quite content with this amount of teal. I think I may start moving on to my next color, which in my case is going to be about medium blue. So you can mix it on exact same spot or you can choose another spot. I'm going to mix on the same spot. So I'm just going to take a bit more blue and I'll mix it into it. I'm not going to be adding any yellow or white to it because it already has enough of both. Let's try this one and we'll adjust it if needed. I think this is a pretty good color. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go from the edges here. So I'm gonna color the edge fully. So all this white canvas that's available there, you wanna cover it up fully. And then as your brush is running out of paint, because whenever your brush is full, you want to go on to the empty areas. And then as it's running off paint, you want to start merging it towards the middle in no particular order. Certain areas can be merged further, certain areas can stay a little less. So you don't want to have, a perfect merging from every corner. You do want it uneven, you want it imperfect, you want it very abstract, because that's what makes it interesting. If you make it equal distance from every side, it's just not going to look interesting. It's going to look boring. So make sure that certain areas go further, certain areas stay a bit further behind. Do you see how there are certain areas like here, here, here? And don't control it too much. Whatever happens, happens. Let it live its own life here. Just make sure you always, whenever you refill the brush, start with the area that has empty uncovered canvas. Sort of empty your brush in there, use up majority of your paint, and then just gently scraping the surface of your canvas with very little bit of paint left on your brush. Continue working towards the middle with whatever left, and you will see that it merges nicely. And you see it creates that beautiful, very cloudy look. And that's exactly what we're going for here. I'm just going to continue going down and doing the exact same thing. Notice I'm actually not going to be going all the way here. I'm going all the way around this teal area, but I'm not going all the way down with this. And I may need to mix a little more of color. Again, could be the same shade, could be just similar shade. Don't try to aim for exact perfect match, because that would not be in your favor. In your favor is to have more shades here. right, and this is pretty much as far as I'm gonna go. And notice again how it's nice and foggy and blended in the middle, and that's what you want. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can see all the blobs and the cloudiness and unevenness, and that's a good thing. All right, so whenever you have the first two colors, you can move on to the next one. Again, work at your own pace, because this video, even as it is live, you can just rewind and rewatch sections of it. The only thing you can do while it's live is to pause it, but whenever we're done the live event, you're going to be able to pause it as well. So there's no need to rush. But I will be going at a particular speed because my paint dries at a particular speed. So I have to keep up with the speed of my paint drying. All right, so the next color I'm going to move on to is going to be still blue. It's just going to be a darker version. So this time, I'm just going to take a straight up dark blue, not even mixed with anything, just this dark blue. And I'm only going to grab a little bit of it. I don't need too much because my canvas is already fully covered. So I'm just going to be dry brushing it on. And this is going to get pretty dark, so don't be afraid to use it. So I'm going to start at the edge. And again, I'm going to start by adding some. And then I'm going to start rubbing it in. Then I'm going to take a little bit more. Go at the edge again. And do the same thing. The closer you go to the middle, the more careful you need to be and make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush, because it's gonna really, it can make it blobby and kind of rough and a little too harsh if you use too much paint here. So as you notice, again, I always, whenever I have a fresh paint, go onto the edge. And then whenever I know for a fact that my brush has bare minimum paint left, only then I go closer to this side. Sometimes I even dab off my brush on a paper towel just to help myself out, to make sure I don't add too much paint. Now you will find that this is easier to do if your paint here on a first layer is, I would say, half dry or 70% dry. If it's fully wet, you're gonna have a little bit of a harder time doing this because your paint will be blending too much. So your dark blue will be blending too much into your light blue, and it's not gonna be retaining that darkness that we're adding it for. If it's fully dry, you may find a hard time blending it. So I would say like 70-80% dry or half dry is most ideal. I would say even like 70% dry is probably most ideal, but you could work with fully dry or you could work with half dry. Fully wet, not ideal. So if it is fully wet for you, I would say just grab a blow dryer and dry it up a bit, either to that 80% dry mark or to being fully dry, whatever works for you. And I may need to do that as well, actually. My paint is, I would say, about 70% dry. So it is working well, but I do want to go even darker on the next layer. And I know this one is not going to dry as fast as I would like it to by itself, the one that I'm adding right now. So I'm okay for this layer, but I know that for the next layer, it would be more ideal for me to dry it up, to speed it up as well. So just a heads up, guys. If you have a blow dryer nearby, great, grab it, you'll use it. If you don't have one nearby yet, maybe you want to grab one. But also, it's not required. Again, if you do it from the video, if you don't need to try to keep up with live version, you can just let it air dry. You can go make yourself a cup of tea or go for a snack. You go to washroom, check your emails. Whatever do a load of laundry, whatever needs to be done as you wait for it to dry. All right. And again, you decide how much of it you want to have. It is entirely up to you. The pattern, this the design will form by itself. It's just let it do its thing. So whatever happens, let it happen. If you don't love it, adjust it. Don't have to copy my pattern precisely or at all. All right, I think I have enough of this blue. So I am going to quickly run and get my blow dryer because I really need it. And I would suggest you guys do the same because next color we're gonna go on to is gonna be even darker one. It's gonna be a purple color. So it should better be dry before we move on to that color. And generally, blow dryer does always help. All right, I'm gonna quickly run there and I will be back in a second. All right, I am back with my hair dryer. So let's do some blow drying here. All right, I'll actually keep it plugged for now. I may use it later. I'll just put it aside. Whoops. A lot of cords. All right, so pretty dry for me, fully dry, just the way I wanted it. And now I'm going to move on to my purple. I'm going to grab my large brush again, and I'm going to mix my primary blue, which is fairly dark as you can see, and my red, nothing else, just red and blue. And as you can see, it almost looks black. If you look at it more transparent, if you make it more transparent and look at it, you can see that it's purple. But because those two paints don't have any color premixed into it other than the pigment that it is, so they don't have any white premixed into it. That's why when combined, because they're so dark by themselves, they just look very dark. And this works in my favor here. I do want it dark. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of this purple, and I'm going to start rubbing from the edge in, just the same way that it did with my blue, but this time, again, a bit less. So again, I'm going to start at the edge, and as needed, I'm going to be dabbing off my brush on a paper towel. If my, let's say, brush is not running out of paint as fast as I would have liked it to, then I'll just dab it off on a paper towel to make sure I don't drag this dark paint all the way in, because I don't want it. I want it to stay fairly close to the edge, and I only want to drag in what I want, basically. I don't want any more than that. Now, if you find difficulty blending, another trick is, so for example here, do you see there is like not a perfectly blended spot? What I could do is I could wash off my brush, dab it off on paper towel so it's almost dry, and then with a clean, almost dry brush, go over those spots and rub them in. This kind of creates a little bit softer and more foggy blending, because you're blending with sort of dry brush, so it's like almost dry brush. So it watered down your paint a little bit and helps it spread better. If you can do it without that, great. If you can't, you can always assist by washing your brushes, dabbing your brush in a paper towel, and then blending with a clean, dry-ish brush. So this is just blending as is without the brush. But again, if you need to use that brush, if you need to use additional blending brush, great, use that. Nothing wrong with it. I'm gonna go lower here too. So I'll blend with the brush here, and I'm gonna wash off my brush, dab it off on a paper towel so it's almost dry. And then with just so slightly wet brush, I'm gonna go over this edge, over the edge of the section that I just added, to smudge that edge and properly blend it into surroundings. It'll look a little bit softer. And then I'm gonna continue going down with purple here. All right, that looks wonderful. So I think I'm ready to start moving on to this lighter section, and I'm gonna start with light purple. So this purple that I just used, I'm gonna take some white, I'll add it in, I'll make nice light purple, and that would be my very first color. And again, I'm not using too much paint here on my brush, and I'm gonna go around here. So some right here, right here, here. I'll add some in all those sections, and then I'll blend them. I will, blend them towards the middle and towards the outside. It doesn't matter which side you start with. I would say whatever works for you. So we'll dry brush it towards the inside first, and then I'll dry brush it towards the outside. You might even add a bit more purple. I don't think that was exactly enough. I think I could use a little more here. All right, so I'm gonna bring it maybe a little bit higher up to merge the bottom and the top a little bit more. And you see just so lightly. I'm using next to no paint on my brush. This is how little I'm using when going up, because I just want the transition nice and smooth and foggy and pretty and all that. And when I feel like I have enough of that light purple, the next color I'm gonna move on to is gonna be my pink. So I'm just gonna use my red and some white, and you can use any shade of pink. I'm gonna go with something on the lighter side, so I'm not gonna go with like hot pink, but you could, if you wanted to, absolutely, whatever shade works for you, go with that. And again, I'm gonna start by just adding some first, and then I'm gonna merge it in and out. Maybe I'll add a bit more here too, actually. So you see this half circle, and then you rub it up, out, and in. But whenever you have your brush full with paint, so you refill your brush, you're always gonna go into this middle section. Because if you leave a blob there, that's okay. But you do not want to bring a blob of that up or down. Like down is still okay. You can cover it up later, but up, no. You want to go gently, lightly, and only add what you want there. All right, and now I'm gonna start getting warmer. And again, just a reminder, I did add this white later. Originally, it wasn't there. It was just this orangey color was the last color here. Um, so yeah, it's up to you how light you want to go. This white, I'm going to show you as an add-on later, so I'm not going to be adding it right now. So to this color that I'm just used, I'm just going to add a bit of yellow. Might add a bit more red too. So I'm going to make it warmer, so warmer shade, and with that, I'm going to go right in the middle. And we're going to just finish up that section. Doing this part, you can always add more shades as well. It doesn't have to end at the shade. If you want to add, let's say, another shade of pink or anything else, go for it. So let's finish this first. So you see now I have everything covered flat. I don't have any white canvas left. So if I wanted to, I could experiment a little bit and I could add another shade of pink. So I could maybe add hot pink. So I could just take some red, some white, mix them up. Just this time, make a more vibrant pink. And I could add that if I wanted to, or I could make a lighter shade of orange and add it in. So you just experiment. So I added some. Now I'm going to dry my brush on a paper towel to make sure it has next to no paint left. And then I'll just go in and merge it a bit better. So just play with it. You can add a couple lighter shades, a couple darker shades. As I mentioned earlier, the more shades you do, generally, the better. So let's make one lighter shade of pink maybe. I'm going to wash my brush, take some white, take a smidge of red, make a nice pink, nice and light. Maybe I'll do a little bit with that too. Good to have a variety. And guys, does anyone have questions so far? Because we're almost done the background. Not fully done, but we're getting there. So if you do have questions, ask away. It's a good time to do that. Does this technique make sense to everyone? Because if you're struggling with something, I'm here live. Maybe I can help you out. Yeah, blending can be hard. You're absolutely right. I find that the good brush that's perfect for this makes it easier. I mean, yes, you could still do it with any brush. You don't need a special brush to be able to do it, but a soft, fairly large brush will make it much easier. So even like if you have an old makeup brush, maybe like a blush brush or just like a large makeup blending brush that's old and you don't mind ruining it because it will ruin it, you can use that and you will find that it is easier actually to do that way. But again, we don't require it because we don't want to request every single person to buy special brushes for every single painting. That's just a lot of money. We don't do it ourselves either. We just use whatever we have. But if you do have options, the large, soft, rounded brush would be the easiest. Yeah, well, I think everything is good with practice. The more you practice, the better you get at everything. Same with driving, same with, speaking any language or any other skill, exercising, lifting weights. I have, which is, I mean, it's not related totally, but I do have a 1-year-old. She's just 14 months. And she gets very frustrated when something doesn't work out. She tries, let's say, to open something or play with some toy. And if the toy or an item that she's interacting with doesn't do exactly what she wanted to do, she gets frustrated. And I think a lot of the times we do that and we don't give ourselves enough grace as adults And I understand that I'm not talking about you guys, I'm talking about me, but maybe you can relate. I can see myself doing that as an adult. Um, let's say I really like baking, and a lot of the time I would choose a very elaborate recipe, and then my result would not look exactly how I would love it to look. It was still great. I'm not a bad baker, actually. I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not a professional baker. Let's just say that. So sometimes my result wouldn't look like it should, and I will get frustrated. But by having 1 year old, I feel like I am constantly reminded to give myself grace and remind myself that learning is hard. And sometimes I may get frustrated when I'm trying to do something, but it's unfamiliar skill, or maybe I'm just, not as fluent or comfortable in it. And there is a learning stage, and that's okay. And as long as I'm making even a small progress, that's a step in the right direction. So yeah, I find that it's the same with painting or the same with blending. The more you do it, the better you get. And give yourself grace. A lot of grace. If it doesn't look the way you imagined or just would love to look, that's okay. You're getting there, you're learning, you're developing a skill, and that's important. And sometimes that takes time. Actually, it always takes time. It's just sometimes it takes more time and sometimes it takes less time. So I think maybe I'll add okay, let's add just one more color. Because important thing is also to know when to stop. So I'm gonna make maybe a little lighter orange, and we'll just add it right here. That's enough, because I don't want to overdo this with 100 million colors, but also you can never overdo this. But still important to know when to stop, and I'm making a decision to stop. All right, and my background is almost done. The only other thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add black to my background. And you can choose whether you want it or not. It doesn't need to be added black. Like, it's not a super necessary color here, but it is nice to have. I did originally add black, so that's why I'm going to teach with it. But if you don't want to add it, that's fine, because it just may be just dark enough already at this point. So if you decide to add black, you're going to grab, again, bare minimum on a brush that's clean and almost dry. And then with that, you're just going to add it in the areas that are already super dark, just to add that little smidge of depth of color. So notice I'm not adding it everywhere. And then so I dabbed some. I'm gonna dry my brush on the paper towel fully. And then I'm just gonna rub it into that blue and purple to make sure that certain areas, the edge is like a solid black. But make sure you're blending it nicely into the colors, because just for the depth, you don't want to have like streaks of black going in. If you do it right, you will probably not even notice that it's black. It's just gonna deepen your purples and blues. But if it does look black, that's okay. As long as it doesn't go like blobs towards the inside, that's what you don't want to have. Everything else is fine. And then we're gonna start adding our stars. We're gonna splatter some, then we're gonna add our moon, and then we'll finish up by adding our cliff here and our tree, and then I'll show you optionally this white glare and a second cliff. All right, I'm happy with this. I think this looks awesome. I'm just gonna stop. All right, let me see if anyone has any questions. The bottom part, Soria, just so you message. So I did pink, then orange-ish. By orange, I mean it's like a coral. It's not exactly orange. And then just a couple more shades of the same, some lighter, some darker, just a little bit, and blend. And you can also you guys can rewind the sections of the video. Even as we're live, you can just scroll back a little bit and rewatch parts of it, and then scroll to, you know, present time as well. So it gives you that ability, or at least it used to do that, unless YouTube changed something. That's how it should be right now. Yeah, totally. In regard to your orange, I'm not sure. I don't know what luminous orange look like, because sometimes colors really vary by brand. The same color in different brands could be different. If it looks similar to that, you can definitely use it. But honestly, I would say use any orange. As long as you like it, that's all that matters. As long as you're happy with the color and it's just pleasing to your eye, great. I don't see why there would be a shade of orange that wouldn't work here. I think any orange would work here, as long as you're happy with it. All right, and now I'm gonna move on to my stars. So I have, as you can see, lots of stars, just everywhere, some small, some big, variety. But I will do them in variety of colors as well. I'm gonna start with one of those lighter pinks or oranges, so something on the lighter side, and I will splatter it around here. And then I will do a light teal or blue here, and then only I will do some white everywhere. And there are different ways that we can splatter do. I'll show you a variety, because I find personally for myself, I like a combination of different splatter techniques. Because if I do just one splatter technique, it can look a little flat. But if you have a variety of technique, it just has a bit more depth. So I'm gonna start by making one of those lighter colors. It doesn't matter which one. You could do light pink, you could do light orange, just something on a lighter side from this color scheme. I think I'm gonna go with light orange here. I think I would prefer that. So this is good color. I'll go with this. So one option on splatter is you take your brush, fill it fully. So notice how I don't have a blob of paint on. It's all the way in my bristles. Use large brush and just do this. And most of the time you will end up with a very fine splatter. I'm gonna even show you closer. Do you see? Some of the splatter are so small, they're just not even visible, but on my camera when I put it down, because they need to be zoomed in. But this is what I like about it. It gives this variety. So you're gonna see depth. It's gonna look like there's some stars really far in the distance and there's some stars closer up. So that's why I like it. So we're gonna start by doing that. And then once you've done that, you can refill your brush with paint. Make sure you paint, another thing, make sure your paint is nice and very liquid. If your paint is thick, you're not gonna have a beautiful fine splatter. You're gonna have a blob at best, or it's not gonna splatter at all. So now that you refill your brush with nice liquid paint, not too much, not too little, you can just do a bit of that, and that will give you a slighter, larger splatter. So do you see? This time they look like a little firework explosions in certain areas. I'm not gonna do too many of those, but I do find that it's a good addition to the splatter that we did like this that looked much, much lighter and less visible. So that's one splatter, and it should be warm in color because again, you're using one of the colors present here, so it should look glowy almost. And now I'm gonna use my light teal. So I'm gonna wash my brush and I'm gonna make that teal again. So that's white, a little bit of blue, and a tiny touch of yellow. So again, there's no particular shade of teal that you have to use as long as it's on a lighter side. That's what we're looking for pretty much. And we'll do the same thing. I'll water it down to make sure my paint is nice and liquid. If it's too thick, it's not gonna work. So nice and liquid, rub it all the way into my brush. Make sure my my finger is clean. And I'm gonna go ahead and splatter a little. And once it lands on the light teal areas, you may not even see it, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. It's all intentional. It will be visible on all other areas though, and it will almost like merge your teal a bit more into the rest of the colors. And for those who are wondering, the video will stay on replay. It's not going anywhere right here. All right, and now I can do a bit more of that larger splatter too. And you can use a finger or you can use a separate brush or a pencil. It doesn't really matter. Anything that you can bang your brush on. Like, it doesn't matter what it is exactly. Just add a couple of larger splatters. And once you have that, I'm going to move right on to the white one. And I'm going to do white on everything, pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to start with finger splatter, and then I'm going to do splatter with like finger splatter like this first, and then splatter like this. But what I want to mention here is I'm going to try to keep it away. The white, I'm going to try to keep it away from my edge. I'm going to try to focus on middle. If it gets a little bit closer to the edge, it's okay. But I'm not intentionally going to go over the edge. In fact, I'm intentionally going to try not to. All right. So yeah, toothbrush, absolutely. If you have extra toothbrush, which actually most people do, because some dentists just give you a lot of toothbrushes. And if you use electric, you don't need them. So you may have a lot of extra toothbrushes at home, or just old toothbrush. You can use that too. So I'm gonna start with white. All right, that's my one layer of white. Now I'm gonna grab a bit more white with my brush. Again, make sure it's nice and liquid. I'm gonna add a couple larger. So you see, again, I'm getting a nice variety here, which I like. Great, I'm happy with it. And then there's something I want to mention. I'm not going to be doing it, but I do want to mention it. If it got too much on your black, let it dry, and you can just grab some black and rub it over, just the same way that we did it originally, to cover up some of that unnecessary splatter. Because what it will do, if you have too much splatter on your dark edges, it will almost make them flatter and not as deep. Um, it, it will get rid of that deep space look, because the stars that far in the darkness shouldn't be as visible or bright. So you can even add a bit more transparent black over them, or transparent watered down blue, or something to darken them up around the edges. But make sure this all is super dry before you do it. If it's wet, you're just gonna lose them all. It's gonna turn into a mess. But yeah, once it dries, you could deepen it up a bit with a darker color over it as well. You having trouble with splashes? What exactly is happening? Can you describe it to me so I can tell you how to fix it? And guys, I'm actually going to mute myself, and I'm going to blow dry this so I can move to my next step. It doesn't have to be blow dried to the next step, but I do find it more helpful and just easier to work with if it is dry. So I'm just going to mute myself so you don't have to listen to that. All right, so to answer your question, thank you for describing the issue that you have with splashes. You said that either way, either very little comes out or a big line shows up. That could be two things. Either your consistency of paint is wrong, so it sounds like it's too thick. So when your paint is too thick, it has a really hard time to splattering. Because it's too thick, it would either not splatter at all, or if it does, it flies like a massive blob or like a line. So you get too much or nothing. You don't get just the right amount. So I would say water it down, and water it down maybe a lot. Like I'm watering down my paint to a consistency of like a coffee cream pretty much, or even like whipping cream. So some sort of cream, liquid cream. Um, so it needs to be quite watery for it to fly just right. Second issue that you could be experiencing, I really think it's your consistency. Okay, good. But the second issue that you could have been potentially experiencing is the wrong amount of paint on your brush. If you have too much, it may fly like a big line or like a big blob. If you don't have enough, it could be just that nothing happens. You're trying, it's just not going anywhere. So that's another thing that could be happening. So it's about finding that just the right amount. But you wouldn't know, you wouldn't find it until you try it. So just try it. If it's not going anywhere, if you find that it's not doing anything, add a bit more paint. Or if you find that, oh, that flew like a big blob, then that could have been a little bit too much paint. All right, so I dried mine, and I'm gonna move on to my moon now. And what I'm gonna start with is I'm gonna take my medium brush, and I'll take a little bit of white paint. And I'm gonna go, I can still see my moon, by the way. I can see my pencil through. If you cannot, you're more than welcome to grab whatever object you were using and outline it again over this paint. But again, make sure it's dry. Don't do it on wet. If you still somewhat see what was your original shape, that's great. You can just work with that. And I'm gonna go on the inner side of that moon shape. And I'm gonna add a little line that's gonna be visible mostly right here. And as I go up, it's gonna start getting smaller, 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 and less visible until it fully disappears. And as soon as I have this, I'm actually gonna wash my brush. I'm gonna dab it off on a paper towel, dry, dry, dry. And then I'm gonna start merging this edge into my background. So I'm gonna rub it in to create a smooth blending so it doesn't look like a line, so it doesn't have that edge of a line. Do you see? Now it looks much smoother. Hi, Vicky. And now you can darken it up a bit. So you can take a bit more white and you can just add a bit more right here. Just dry brush it on this time or rub it in to make it a little bit more solid here and a little bit darker, a little more visible. Oh, yay. That's good. I'm glad. Very, very glad. So that's a base for my moon. Now I'm just going to start adding almost like a random wavy lines to create all those low and high points. So again, don't use too much paint on your brush, but use enough so it's visible. And then I'm going to start at the edge and just going to bring them in and out. Again, don't use too much paint because if you do, it's going to be too blobby, almost like dry brush it on. See, I added like almost like a wiggly line, wavy line. I'm just going to add a couple more of those, and they're going to start forming those craters and ins and outs and highs and lows and everything else. you see? It's just a couple wavy lines that are properly blended that make that look. But of course, if you just actually want to draw them out and work on them like this, shade around them, that's totally fine too. Whatever works for you guys. We just want to give our moon some texture, so it doesn't look so flat and lifeless, so it looks like there's some texture, something interesting going on there. And then I will add even more onto my edge here, so it's really nice and light. All right, and my moon is done. So now I can move on to my, what could be a last element, but it wouldn't be, but it could be this cliff and a tree. And then after that, I'm gonna add the large stars, and I'm gonna add the optional elements such as white glow from the bottom and the second cliff. So if you can still see somewhat your original pencil, great, you can work with that. Or if you don't mind freehanding it and freestyling and just going for it with paint, great. Move on right onto doing that. If you don't want to, if you don't want to take any chances, you can dry it all up. Well, at least background, just make sure your background's dry. Moon doesn't have to be dry. It's fine if it's still wet. And just grab a pencil and outline this little cliff again with pencil. That's totally fine. Whatever works for you guys. Oh yeah, Vicky. I'm glad. Glad. All right, and I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna take some black on my medium brush. I am watering down my black just a little bit, not a lot. And that's not for consistency. I still want my paints, sorry, it's not for the color. I still want my paint solid. I just want it a bit more liquid. And I'm gonna start by putting one line for my top. So start it somewhere right here. And then I'm gonna add another line for the bottom. And remember how it was like super wiggly and weird shaped. So we're gonna try to do that. And then I'm just gonna color it all in. And here is my first cliff. And now I'm gonna add my tree, and I'm gonna add a bit of grass there too. And I'll add a bit of white or gray on the bottom to highlight it, to make it look like there's some light coming from the bottom underneath. So let's start with our tree. I'm gonna do my tree trunk. I'm gonna do it from the bottom up. So I'm gonna push a little bit harder on my brush on the bottom. It can be any shape. Mine is kind of wiggly. Yours can be straight, that's okay. The only thing that you want that's important here is it needs to be thin and not too big. You don't want to make it big and you don't want to make it thick. So if you can do it with a medium brush, that's okay, you can, but small brush is probably your best choice here. And we're gonna make it small. And I'm gonna start not right at the edge, a little bit in, so somewhere around here. And your tree trunk can be absolutely any shape, just make sure it has nice shape. And I started on the bottom and go up because wherever you start, it usually is a thicker point. And tree trunks always need to be thicker on the bottom because that's where they grow from. I'm happy with the shape. Actually, I like it even more than my original shape. Very happy with it. I'm going to keep it. And I did that with medium brush, but again, I wouldn't recommend that. Small brush is better brush to use. And then I'm going to grab my small brush and I'll really water down my black here. It's really important, guys. Don't skip the step. Again, not for color. You don't want to make it like a barely visible color. You still want it solid black, but you do want it liquid. If it's not liquid enough, no matter how good your brush is, you will not be able to make fine lines. So for you to create fine lines, your brush needs to be good, but also your paint needs to be liquid. And I'm going to start adding branches. I'm not going to be adding too many branches, but I will add a few. And all the branches you're going to be adding from the tree trunk. So from the inside out. So add a branch and then from it you can add a few more branches. That's what we're going to do. The goal is to create a nice branch system. So once we dab it up, we have a nice full, almost like a circle, a rounded tree. All right, and now I'm gonna grab my medium brush again, and I'm gonna take just a bit of blood. It doesn't need to be liquid this time. In fact, it's better if it's more like a dry brush, so not a lot of paint. And I'm gonna start dabbing. I'm gonna start dabbing around here first because that's gonna be the most solid area. And then I'm sort of gonna spread it in and spread it out and spread it around. So this is where I'm gonna start dabbing. So of course you should have enough paint on your brush so it looks somewhat solid. You don't want to have so dry brushed amount that it doesn't look solid. I'm gonna dab, 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 dab. And once I created a nice base that I'm happy with, then I'm gonna start spreading it a little bit. So do you see the little dabs that are further are kind of smaller and a little more separate. They're not as attached to the main cluster. All right, and that's my tree. I'm happy with it. I love it. I'm gonna keep it. So the next element that I'm gonna add in black is gonna be my grass. So again, I'm gonna grab my small brush and nice liquid black paint. And I'm gonna start adding grass, and I'm gonna flick it from the top edge of this cliff out, and it can be flicked in a variety of directions. Some is gonna go that way, some is gonna go the other way. The variety is good, just watch out here for What I want you to watch out here for is don't make it too large. You don't want to make your grass taller than a tree or like half size of your tree. So you see, always use the tip of your brush and flick it from the cliff out in a variety of directions. Or you can do one direction. It really is up to you. There's no particular direction it has to be in. Mine goes in a variety of directions. And that's how I like it. And then last element that I'm going to add on this cliff is I'm going to add a highlight on the bottom. So there are two ways you can do it. You can just use white, especially if your black is still very dry, very wet. You can totally use white. It will blend. It will turn into gray by itself. Great. If not, you can make gray. So that's what I'm going to do because my paint is actually pretty dry. So I'm just going to take some white. I'll add some black. I'll make about medium gray. I would say maybe even medium dark. So not a light gray. And with this gray, I'm going to add a bit of highlight on the bottom. So just a couple lines. It doesn't have to be just one line. You can add more than one line. I usually add like a few lines. I'm not doing one solid line. I'm doing a variety of lines. I'm doing a combination of a few. And then once I have that in gray, then I'm going to take some white, just a little bit. And I'm going to highlight in white, but only on the very bottom. And just a little bit. Again, I'm not doing a full-on solid line. I'm doing like a flick here, flick there. Yay! And then official, the last element. So again, because the original painting looked like that, right? It didn't have a second cliff. It only had one cliff and stars. So we're gonna add stars to finish this version. And then I'm gonna show you all the add-ons that I added here. So for the stars, you're gonna choose a couple spots where you're gonna add the stars and you're gonna use your small brush and we're gonna add those really foggy dots first. So I'm gonna add like a combination, a few stars here. So you're gonna add a dot and then with your finger, you're just gonna dab it up. And you're gonna add a few of those. And they're gonna look very nice and foggy. That's at the base for our stars. And some can be smaller, some can be bigger. You can have a variety of them. It doesn't have to be just one or two or 10, but all the same size. You can have some bigger, some smaller, and as many as you want. I don't like evenly spreading them all over background. I like to kind of go in clusters and create a combinations that I like. But I do highly recommend that you do a variety of sizes because it always makes it look more interesting. All right, and then in those spots, not in all of them, just choose a few. I'm gonna add stars. So I'm gonna take a little bit of white just on the tip of my brush. Again, preferably liquid white because it will just make it easier for you, but not really required. Those lines are small. And we're gonna do, so let's start. I will show the star as an example. So I'm gonna put a dot, and then from that dot, line up, then from the same dot, line down, then line to the left, and line to the right. And here we go, one star. So this way, I'm just gonna add a couple stars. Again, you don't have to add them in every single foggy dot that you created. Choose whichever ones you do want to turn into star, full-on stars, and whichever ones you don't. So add a couple of those, as many as you want, and wherever you want them to be. And that's pretty much it. That is our last step for this version of the painting. If you are happy with this version and you just want to stop here, great. That's where you sign it, put your initials or your name, and you call it a day. Don't add a thing. Proudly hang it on a wall. The only thing that you may want to add here is edge, because we didn't do our edge, but it's super easy. I would probably just recommend doing black, because black goes pretty much all around except the very bottom. So yeah, if you use black and just color all your edges, you're not going to have that messiness. Or if you want to go a little more elaborate, or if you didn't add black, you can color match. So if you didn't add black, you will going to do, let's say, purple or dark blue, whatever the darkest color is here. But the bottom, you can color match. You can do purple, pink, orange. Don't have to do every single shade, just one shade. Just bring it on the bottom so it matches, so it looks like you wrapped your image around your canvas frame. Now, for those who just at least want to, who's curious to see what would happen if we add the rest of the steps, I'm going to show you the rest of the steps. And then you can decide whether you want to stop here, sign it, call it a day, or if you want to bring it to this look. Because again, I don't know which look you prefer. I wasn't able to choose. I loved both. That's why I made both. So, yeah, options. Options are good. For this look, is we're gonna start by dry brushing some white from the bottom up. So you're gonna grab your, I'm gonna be using large brush still, but medium brush will work just as well. It doesn't have to be a large one. And then we're gonna grab just a tiny bit of white on a clean, very slightly wet brush. And I'm gonna add like a little wiggly, maybe even few. Then I'm gonna dab my brush off on the paper towel, and I'm gonna start merging them. And I may need to wash my brush a couple times and re-dry it on a paper towel to properly merge them. So this is a start. Now I'm going to add a bit more white. So this is a good amount, but now I'm going to go with a bit more white. And I will add that on the bottom. Just a bit more to create that glow, a bit more glow. And of course you merge it. So exact same technique that we used on the upper part of the painting, is just this time you are free to use more of that technique where you blend it with a clean, slightly dry, slightly wet brush, because everything is so dry that you might find it very helpful to do that instead of just brushing it and hoping that it blends naturally. And whenever you feel like you have enough glow, you stop. And again, it's so up to you how much glow you want to have. You can have more, you can have less. And then I'm going to add that second cliff. So again, I'm going to take my small brush, sorry, not small, medium. I'm going to take some black and I'm going to start by putting upper line. It's going to go from here until around here, so don't touch the top one. That. And then I will make a bit of a crazier shape for the bottom one. So very similar, exact same thing actually that we did on the upper one, just smaller and on a different side. That's the only difference. And then I'm gonna grab my small brush and I'm gonna add a couple flicks of black from the bottom up. So here I'm gonna do just one direction, and then I'm gonna do the highlight on the bottom, similar to what I did on the other side. So I'm gonna start with gray. Do a little bit of gray first. Yay, I'm glad you like it. So glad. So a bit of gray. And then once we have some gray, then I'm just gonna take straight white and I will highlight a bit, just the very bottom here with straight white. And in this version, I'm actually gonna add a bit more stars on the bottom to make it even glowier. So I'm gonna add a bit more of that, those glowy stars. Right, and let's turn some of them into more of a stars, the visible stars with the lines. All right, and that's pretty much it. After that, I am officially done. So I'm gonna go ahead and I will sign it. I'll put my initials, but you can do any kind of signature that you want. And again, this is optional, this one, and this is optional. It was not in the original, so you guys can just stop at that. You don't have to go all the way. Done. And of course, consider doing your edges. And guys, feel free to share your results. I'm going to post a link here in chat right now, but I will also add it very shortly to the description of this. All right, let's find it. All right, so here it is. Here's the link. Feel free to just click on a link. It will bring you right into a Facebook group where you're welcome to post your results. Would love to see how they turned out. No pressure if you don't want to, that's okay. But we always do love to see how your results look, right? Based on our instructions. That help us to know how to adjust it. But also it makes us feel like we're doing it together in one room, even though we're all over the world. Will there be a replay? Absolutely, yes. This video stays right here. So come back to our channel anytime. It's not going anywhere. It's right here. You don't need any special link. You can even save this link to this video right now anywhere on your device. Send yourself a message. It's going to be right here. So you can come back and do it anytime. And guys, For those of you who did sign up on a website and left a tip, thank you very much. We do really appreciate it. And if you did enjoy this and you do want to say thank you by tipping me, you're more than welcome to do it. I will include a link to a PayPal in a description of this video. As soon as we're done, I'll add it in there. You're more than welcome to just use that to leave a little tip. If you want to, no pressure. And if you do want to say thank you in different ways, you can just share this video, give it a thumbs up, or leave a nice comment, whatever works for you. All of that is very much appreciated. And if you have requests for what you would like to paint next, you're more than welcome to leave that in comments too. Yay. Alrighty, guys. Does anyone have questions before I disconnect? Ask away anything you want. You're very welcome. Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. It really does. And I hope you kids enjoy this. Yay. Thanks, Vicky. Alrighty, guys. Thank you. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night. Bye.